Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars and welcome to my Q&A answer session. You may remember fairly recently on the channel passed 8,000 subscribers, and to celebrate the channel reaching and passing 8,000 subscribers, I said that I would do a Q&A. So I put up a video asking for questions, and I got quite a few through actually, so I thought I would do the video and answer all of your questions. So please let me know if I've missed anybody. I don't think I have, but you know, sometimes it happens. So if I do miss you, I apologize and let me know in the comments. Right, so we'll get straight into it, and I'm answering them kind of in the order in which they arrived, sort of thing. And the first one came from Enigma, and he has 3 questions, and the first one is, what's my gaming history? How far do I go back? Well, I go right back to the Atari 2600. That was the first console machine I can remember playing. It was pretty terrible, but as I was a kid, it was great fun. And then I kind of moved on to things like the Spectrum, the Commodore, Amiga, Commodore 64, and then Master System. And then I kind of had a bit of a gap, and then I restarted when I got my first PlayStation 1, and then it's PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, so on and so forth. And mixed in between that has been the original Xbox, Xbox One, and I've currently got an Xbox Series S as well as a PlayStation 5. So, yeah, I have always been into gaming for the most part, but probably more so in the last 20 years or so, if I'm honest. Right, the second question from Enigma is my favourite genre of a game. What's my favourite genre of a game? To be honest, probably I would say I like RPGs, like Western RPGs. I like things like Witcher 3, Cyberpunk, things like that. Really good, well-written like RPGs that are quite, you know, really draw you in. I like things like turn-based strategy games like XCOM and things like that. I like building and management sims, you know, them games where you can kind of build cities or that kind of stuff. I like them sort of things. I find them quite relaxing. And I like space simulations like Elite and No Man's Sky. Those are my favourite types of games, I guess. I also like, you know, the narrative games like the Telltale games or the Until Dawn type stuff. I like them sort of things as well. So I've quite a wide variety. I'm not into multiplayer games. I'm not into shooters. Like fast-paced action games, fighting games, driving games, generally speaking, don't really interest me that much. So yeah, those are the sort of games I like to play the most. And the third question is my thoughts on gaming fueling violence. Quite a deep question there. And my thoughts really are on it in regards to that. I think part of that is twaddle. I don't think gaming fuels violence. I think it's more down to the parenting. If you bring your child up correctly and you are responsible in what you expose them to, then I don't necessarily think there's going to be a problem. I think if someone goes out there and they start doing what they do and shooting people and doing this kind of stuff, and then they start blaming it on video games, it's twaddle. They've got something missing in there, in my mind, those sort of people. For the most part, I think it comes down to parenting. If you are careful in how you bring up your child. For example, I'm not saying I'm the perfect parent by any stretch of the imagination, but when my son was young, I exposed him quite early on to things like superheroes and Star Wars and things like that, because that was a really easy way and a simple way to introduce a child to good and bad, good and evil, right and wrong, those sort of things. And I think that's a good thing to expose your children to, them sort of things, and it's an easy thing for them to understand. So yeah, my son has played games most of his life, and I'm not saying I let him play like Call of Duty and GTA when he was young and stuff, but you know, I did expose them to him slowly but surely as I thought he was mature enough to accept playing them and not for them not to affect him. So in my opinion, it comes down to parenting, but everyone may have different thoughts on that. Right, thanks for the questions, Enigma. The next question is from Puzzled Peanut. What's my take on the gaming industry these days? I think it's fueled by profits, obviously, but of course it is. I mean, it was a bit simpler years ago. You remember the days where PlayStation 1s and 2s when you got the demo discs on the magazines and all that kind of stuff, and You had to put codes in through your controller and all this kind of stuff, and it's all now fueled by profits, with microtransactions and DLCs and all this kind of stuff. And it is what it is. The AAA game industry, for the most part, is pretty naff, but you do get some gems in there, obviously. But yeah, I think it's okay. I'm getting a bit tired of some of the AAA industry type stuff. I'm quite interested quite a lot these days on more of the indie titles. I try and put quite a bit of focus on those on the channel. But yeah, it doesn't grind my gears or anything like that, but it is what it is, the gaming industry. Right, thanks for the question. The next questions are from Matthew Cooley, and he asks, what's the worst movie I have ever seen? What's the worst movie I've ever seen? Oh, that'll be The Hospital that I reviewed recently on the channel. It was a film that was recommended to me by Leo over at Geek Legion of Doom. On my recommended by you reviews, he put the recommendation in for The Hospital, and I knew it was a film that he didn't like very much as well. So I did watch that, and yeah, it's pretty appalling. I put that right up there with the worst films I think I've ever seen. The Hospital. What's the worst game I have ever played? That's a tough one, you see, because games are quite expensive. I don't generally pay money for a game that I know is not going to be good. Occasionally you get suckered into a game and you're fairly disappointed sometimes, but I've not really, I can't really remember many games where I've thought that is appalling. The only two really I can think of is I remember playing Star Wars Masters of Terrakasi, I believe it was called. It was like a fighting game on the original PlayStation. It was terrible. Basically, you were Luke Skywalker fighting Darth Vader, Tekken style almost, or Street Fighter style. Sounds great, doesn't it? But it really wasn't. It was very disappointing. And I suppose there's a game I've reviewed fairly recently on this channel called International Boxing, I think it was called, that I did warn people not to buy. Appalling. Really, really bad. And those are the only two that really spring to mind. I'm sure there were a few that I was very disappointed with, but not as many that I was, really upset with. So thank you very much for those questions. The next questions come from Jamie Burton. How big is my collection? Now, you don't specify whether you mean my film collection or my game collection. So, in regards to my film collection, honestly, I've no idea, and I wouldn't really want to count them now. A lot. So I see some people doing videos showing off their full collection and stuff. I don't think I could be asked doing that, if I'm honest. I'm not sure anyone would be that interested either. But quite a few Blu-rays, I think it's fair to say. And in regards to games, now, while I like to collect physical media for my Blu-rays, I don't collect physical media with my games. I prefer to download them. So I looked in my library when I saw this question. And in my library, in my PlayStation library, I have 642 games in my library. Now, some of those will be like free games that you get on PlayStation Plus over the last 2, 3, 4 years. Some of them will have been games that I picked up dirt cheap in sales, all this kind of stuff. And some of them I probably will never play again. But yeah, the 642 in my collection, and that's not including what I have on my Xbox account. I don't have nowhere near, I bet I don't even have 50 in my Xbox account because I don't play much of Xbox games. And his next question is, do I own an Xbox? And yes, I do. I've got an Xbox Series S. And the reason why I got that, and I don't play it often, is because I wanted to play Starfield and things like that when Bethesda start releasing games exclusively onto the Xbox. Other than that, I don't play it particularly often. I would if it was easier to record footage for reviews and things, but Microsoft being what they are, they make it quite difficult to do that. Right, so thanks for those questions. Now, Dabian Donaldson asks, which other reviewers am I a fan of? In regards to big reviewers that I watch, game reviewers, I watch SkillUp as the main game reviewer that I watch. Other than that, I tend to watch game news channels and things like that. But for reviews, I tend to generally watch SkillUp. For film reviews, obviously Chris Stuckman. I still watch him. He doesn't do as much content anymore because he's doing his filmmaking now. But he was the one that, when I saw his content originally, I'm kind of thinking, I could do that. So, yeah, probably like many of you, they've got your own channels as well. I do watch Critical Drinker, but not as often as I used to because I find him a little bit militant. Obviously, I watch a lot of content from Leo's channel, Geek Legion of Doom. I like Sean in Lost in the Reel. I like the way he presents his reviews, presents his content. I think it's really good editing, and I think he's a really good reviewer. The way he puts the reviews across, I really think is very good. I watch a lot of channels really. I don't want to kind of reel out a load of channels because I don't want to miss somebody. But I do watch a lot of people's content. I don't always have time to comment. I try and like the video if I can. Remember, sometimes I kind of listen to them as I'm driving, or sometimes in the bath, whatever. I'll listen to and watch people's reviews. I don't always have time to comment, but I do watch a lot of content, and you all do a great job. So, yeah. So those are a lot of the channels that I watch. And to be honest, I watch a lot of sports stuff as well, like fan channel stuff, because I support Man United. So I'll watch a lot of fan channel content for that. Right, Davian also asks, who would I like to collab with and why? I've had the opportunity to collab with a few people over the years, and I have done bits and pieces. Obviously, I'd like to do something with Chris Stuckman. It's never going to happen, but that would be cool. But to be honest, I'd be happy to collab with anybody, really, if it's possible and I've got time. I would do it. I don't have a lot of time is the honest answer. With work and family life and the rate of content that I put up on my channel, I don't have a lot of spare time. But I would be happy to take part in people's... I see a lot of channels doing live streams and stuff like that, and have guests on and stuff. Any of you guys watching this want to invite me on any of them, if I could make it, I will. I'll sit and have a chat with you all. And that would be a collab as far as I'm concerned as well. So if anybody's interested is what I'm saying in the collab, just get in touch. Contact me on my email address or something. Right, Leo from Geek Legion of Doom asks, what do my family and friends think of me on YouTube? And the honest answer is they're not that fussed, if I'm honest. My co-workers, most of them are aware I've got my YouTube channels. I think maybe a couple of them watch some of the content. My mum occasionally will comment on an odd video. My same with my brother. My wife isn't that fussed really. She knows it's my outlet sort of thing, so she's pretty happy with that. And my son thinks it's pretty cool, I suppose, who has also contributed a little bit to the channel over the years, and certainly this last few months he's done a little bit of content. Trying to get him to focus and do more is challenging, but he's 16, so that's the way it is. But yeah, I don't think anybody's that interested really. But yeah. The second question from Leo is, do I find watching so many movies on the small screen, has it affected my thoughts on the big screen? Sometimes. I think it's hard now. It's hard to watch a film just for enjoyment because you're always watching it with a critical eye. But I still do get that feeling in the cinema, that goosebump feeling, that excitement, like a kid in a cinema. You know, when you go and you're watching something that's just tailor-made for... You sat on a cinema seat eating popcorn and you get that feeling, you know, that buzz of enjoyment. It can't be beat, really. It really can't. As good as some of these films are they're putting on streaming, they'll never compete with that. So my main problem, I think, is I overscore some films that I've seen at the cinema. I've tried to not review them straight after seeing them. I've tried to kind of wait for a day or so before I put up a review. But you want to get those reviews up as fast as possible because you want as many views as possible. So I'm sometimes influenced by still that sense of adrenaline after watching a film at the cinema. And I've probably been guilty of overscoring things over the years after watching things at the cinema. But other than that, no, I don't think it taints me that much in regards to watching them all on a small screen. But it's hard to really sit and watch and enjoy something just for being a film because you're watching it with a critical eye. And his last question from Leo is, if I could interview a celeb, who would it be? Probably Three people, right? I'll try and think of three people who are, if I could interview. One from the film world, and I would probably have to say Clint Eastwood. He's my favourite actor of all time. He's just incredible. So I'd have to say probably Clint Eastwood. In regards to music, my favourite band is OMD, Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark. So I'd have to say the lead singer of OMD, Andy McCluskey. And sports star, I would probably have to say, if I could interview anyone, that's difficult. So many great players. I support Man United, you see. Who would I interview if I could? Probably, it's difficult. Eric Cantona, maybe. That would be an interesting interview. That's why I've said that, really. I was thinking of maybe Beckham, but no, it'd be quite dull, I think, interviewing Beckham. Roy Keane, I love him to bits, but he's a miserable sod. So, yeah, probably Eric Cantona. Thanks for the questions, Leo. Now, Johnny asks, if I could only have 5 movies on a desert island, what would I choose? 5 movies. Shawshank Redemption. These are, I'm trying to think of films that I never tire of watching, so I'll say Shawshank. Jaws, although that might not be suitable on desert island, but Star Wars, Blade Runner, and Terminator, maybe. Those are 5 films that's jumping into my head, but if you think about it too much, I could fire off another 20 easily, but I'll go with them ones. Number 2, if I could take part in any movie, what would I choose? Well, probably, thinking about it, if I could take part in any movie, what would I choose? Probably Jackass. I find those films really funny, and I've often watched some of the stuff and thought, I'd do that. Now, some of the stuff they do is absolutely bonkers, and I wouldn't do them ever. Definitely wouldn't. But some of them I watch and I think, that'd be fun, I'd do that. So probably Jackass, I would say. His next question is, what is your favourite bad movie? And the film that springs to mind there is Mordecai, the Johnny Depp film, Ewan McGregor film from, I don't know, was it 2015? It was lambasted by critics at the time it came out at the cinema. Didn't make any money. It's regarded as one of Johnny Depp's worst films ever. I actually quite like it. I think it's really underrated. So I would probably say Mordecai. Next question from Johnny. A movie I would love to see at a drive-in. Well, we don't really have drive-ins in the UK, but what we do get, mainly around Christmas time, is there's like this truck that travels around the country with like a big screen attached to it, and it parks up in like big parking areas, and it advertises on local social media, and you could drive out there, park in the car park, and watch a movie on like this big screen attached to this truck. And we did it, I don't think it was last Christmas, maybe the Christmas before, we went and watched Die Hard at one of these showings. So I would do it again, they come around every Christmas time and like show Christmas themed movies. So yeah, so I have seen Die Hard on that, and I would probably go again to watch another Christmas film if it comes to my local area. And what movie do you never get tired of? Most of the films I mentioned on the desert island stuff, I never get tired of them. So things like Shawshank, Jaws, Blade Runner, Predator, The Thing, Dirty Harry, things like that, absolute classics. For me, it's impossible to get tired of any of those films because they're just absolutely brilliantly done. Right, the next question is from Professional Amateur Hour, which is Tom, who does content over at Geek Legion of Doom as well. Which screener did I get that I was most excited for? So if you don't know, I get sent screeners for a lot of the films that I review on the channel. A lot of like the low budget, straight to streaming DVD type movies that I review on the channel are screeners that get sent to me. Now, the one I was probably most excited for is probably the first screener that Leo sent me. For those of you who don't know, I also do an occasional review over for Leo's channel over at Geek Legion of Doom. I used to do a lot more, but I don't have as much time now. And I think my first review for his channel was maybe about 4 years ago, maybe a bit more. And it was for a film called Treasure Dog, Timber the Treasure Dog, I think it was called. And at the time, my channel had probably less than 100 subscribers, maybe even less than that. And he asked if I wanted to just do reviews for his channel, and I said yes. And at the time, I think he was around 10,000 subscribers, something like that. And I thought, wow, someone with 10,000 subscribers wants me to do a review on their channel. So I was really excited. So that's probably the most excited I've been for getting sent to Screener. Nowadays, you get sent so many, it's not really exciting anymore. It's stressful, to be fair. Yeah. Ugandan Toad asks, do I see myself gaming still in 20 years? That's actually a really good question, because in 20 years, oh God, I'll be old. So I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not actually sure if I will. And if I am gaming in 20 years, it'll probably be for really chilled out stuff, or revisiting old classics sort of thing. So I think maybe to some degree, but how much so, I'm just not sure, if I'm honest. Encha277 asks, what movie and game genres do I like the least? Okay, in regards to games, I don't like first-person shooters like Call of Duty and that kind of stuff. Don't like them. Multiplayer games, as I've just said, like with Call of Duty and some of these online-only games, I'm not interested in them. You know, like the Predator game that came out that was online only. The new Ghostbusters game that's coming out very soon, which is online only. I'm not interested in playing them sort of things. So, first-person shooters, racing games I'm not that keen on. Fighting games I'm not that keen on. And platformers I'm not bothered about at all. I never have been with them. And in regards to movies, what movie genres do I like the least? That's musicals. Hands down, I don't like musicals. I find them really, really stupid and unrealistic, but that's just me. Lisa Loves asks, 3 questions I think it is. My movie supercast. Wow. So if I could pick like actors in their prime, you'd have to have Clint in there, Burt Reynolds, Arnie, Stallone, Van Damme, Seagal. I mean, a proper Expendables cast. Do you know what I mean? I know Stallone tried his best when he did the Expendables films to get like the relevant action stars, but he missed a few. You know, if you could really pick your best from the eras gone by, Steve McQueen, get him in there. You know, get these absolute icons all in a movie. That would be my kind of dream scenario, really, sort of thing. Yeah, that would be my supercast. My best ever cinema experience. That would probably be Star Wars, because that's the first film I ever saw in the cinema. I was 4 or 5 years old, something like that. And I'd never been to the cinema before, and it was just magical. I can still remember that excitement I felt sat down in the seat watching this happening in front of me. It was fantastic. Terminator 2 as well. I have fond memories of queuing up as I don't know how old I was, 17-year-old, something like that, in my cowboy boots, jeans and leather jacket and shades on, because I was going through my Arnie period. I was obsessed with Arnie at that point in my life. Queuing up, trying to look all cool dressed as Arnie, trying to wait for Terminator 2. So I've got fond memories of Terminator 2, and I've also got fond memories of Superman 2. My local cinema growing up was in a place called Hebden Bridge. I lived in a place called Heptonstall. It was up on top of a hill, and Hebden Bridge Cinema was down at the bottom of the hill, if you like, the village at the bottom of the hill. So we used to walk down, my brother and sister and me and stuff, and go and watch the films down there. I've got fond memories of doing that quite a few times with the Indiana Jones films and stuff like that, going down several times a week and watching movies sort of thing, and walking down and up the hill with my brother and sister. It was pretty good. And the third question from Lisa Loves is, movies that inspired the greatest emotional reactions. Well, I always joke to people that I've only ever cried at one film, and that's Star Trek 2 when Mr. Spock died. And I did genuinely cry when I first saw that. I don't necessarily cry anymore, but I still get a lump in my throat when I see that. I thought it was brilliantly done, how they did that. But that's not necessarily true now. I do have a emotional reaction to a lot of films. I think The Green Mile, I think, really gets me. Obviously Shawshank. And I also think the right horror can get a really good emotional reaction from me, and a physical reaction as well. I've mentioned a few times that watching the right horror film will make me go cold, get like cold fingertips, and and it really makes me sit, and I get shivery when I'm watching a really good horror film, especially if you're watching it on your own. It can be really effective. But those are the sort of things that, get the biggest emotional reactions from me. Thanks for the questions. And the last set of questions come from Johnny K. And he asks, what's the most difficult part of constructing movie and game reviews? Probably, that's tough. That's actually quite tough. Maybe the editing, probably. Like when I'm doing a film review, I have to kind of search for the pictures that I'm going to put in the video. Obviously, I have to get the trailer and download that and then prep that and insert it into the review. And I don't necessarily read off a script. Sometimes I'll make notes and I'll put the phone in front of me when I'm filming the review, and I'll glance down at some bullet points to kind of remind me of things to talk about, which sometimes you might see me kind of looking down like this at a phone when I'm doing a review. But yeah, that probably the editing. After so long now doing reviews, early on it was feeling comfortable in front of the camera was my biggest fear early on. Now that doesn't necessarily happen so much. But probably the editing. It can be quite a lengthy thing sometimes, editing a review. His next question is my bad cinema experiences. Well, you don't get them so much in the UK because we're too polite. You hear horror stories from people in the US and stuff, and I think the worst thing I've had to do is to tell some kids to shut up. I went to the cinema a couple of years. I don't even remember what film it was. It was a Marvel film with my son, and there was like a row of kids behind us, about 4 or 5 teenagers, and they were all, rather than watching the film, they were on the social media, on the phones, I think, playing games and all this kind of stuff, and they didn't have the sound off or anything, and they were laughing and giggling. And I told them to shut up or get out, and it worked, and they did shut up. So that's probably the worst cinema experience I've had. I can't think of much more. And his last film, what film franchise do I think deserves a reboot? That's really tough, because what film franchise hasn't had a reboot of some point in the last decade or so? It's really tough. Do you know who I would like to see, which character I would like to see resurrected? And I'm fairly sure it wouldn't work in today's society, but it would be an interesting experiment, and that would be Dirty Harry. It's an iconic character, an iconic role. There's been enough space in between the films now for, I think, to be resurrected. Now, if they resurrected it and did it justice and didn't soften the character at all, then I think it would work. I've no idea who they should cast as Dirty Harry. That'd be interesting for you guys in the comments. But that's a character I would be interested to see how it could be resurrected for a modern audience, because when you watch the Dirty Harry films, you're kind of like, ooh, he didn't mess about, did he? So how are they going to do that for a modern audience? That would be really fascinating to see. So yeah, that's my answer, probably the Dirty Harry franchise. So that's all the questions, guys, that I got back from you. Thank you so much. I had a wonderful response, lots of questions. I hope you were happy with the answers. Fire in the comments what your thoughts are to some of the questions that were given out. And of course, guys, as always, thank you so much for your support. Really, really delighted that the channel has reached 8,000 subscribers. Long may it continue, and I'm really, really enjoying making all this content for you guys. So thanks for your support, and thanks for watching.